Reb Nachman's Outpouring of the Soul, Chapter 12, Learning. Once a person asked the Rebbe what practices he should use to draw close to God. The Rebbe told him to learn certain Torah subjects. When the person said that he did not have the ability to learn these subjects, the Rebbe responded that through prayer one can accomplish everything. This is the key sentence. When the person said that he did not have the ability to learn these subjects, the Rebbe responded that through prayer one can accomplish everything. With prayer one can gain all good, whether learning, the ability to worship, holiness, or any other good that might exist in all the spiritual universes. Once the Rebbe said, if a person could come back from the dead and pray, he would certainly pray with all his might. If a person could come back from the dead and pray, he would certainly pray with all his might. Now, I grew up down south, where a statement like that is inevitably interpreted to mean, you didn't pray enough in life, so you go to hell at death, and you're just itching to get back into this world for even a moment to pray, try to reverse your sad fortune. I obviously don't interpret it that way today. I believe what it really means is that we, living sentient beings, occupy a space that displaces the world, so that what we experience from moment to moment is in fact not the world. The life inside of here displaces the life outside of there. And so we rarely really see it. We rarely really truly interact with it. Years ago, when I was a beginning Zen student at Daibosatsu Zendo, I went to my first 7-day silent retreat. And it was very, very difficult. I've been studying Zen for some years already and practicing on my own. So I meditated on my own. Finally went off to this 7-day retreat. And Soen Nakagawa Roshi was there. He's a famous, eccentric, very brilliant Japanese Zen master and a haiku poet. And I'd gone because I was a haiku poet myself, and I wanted to learn from him, learn the secret of haiku as a spiritual art. And I went to the retreat with that in mind, to meet him. And I sat and I kept going. Every time I went in to see the Zen master, who ultimately did become my teacher, I would say, I don't think I can last another day. And he somehow, managed to get me through the week. I really don't know even how he did it, but he just sort of like sat there like a rock and said, keep trying, try a little bit more, try like one day more. So finally I did manage to get through it. In any case, on the middle day, Soen Roshi, who rarely gave any kind of doksan or interview, personal interview, was going to meet with every student there. He said, how will you save all beings? That was the question he asked everyone. There were like 120 people at this retreat. I was the least senior of all the students there. And they were going in order, like 120 people from morning to night. And everybody got to see Soen Roshi, all 119, but not 120, not me. I didn't get to see him. It's the last one. And I got up there to go in to see him, and I was repeating insanely, with insane intensity, how will I save all the beings? I was convinced that I was going to solve this koan. And then he rang the bell twice, and that was it. I was just dumbfounded. I couldn't believe it. I'd traveled all this way, so I wasn't going to get to see him. There was no opportunity to meet with this person who was sort of a legend and who I really had pinned my hopes on. So somehow I managed to get through the next 3 days of the retreat, and then the retreat is over. And after the retreat is over, I went walking down the mountain. Daibosatsu is very isolated, very remote. It's the most remote Buddhist monastery probably in America. And So there's a lot of space to wander around and walk. And I went for a walk down this road, and I got halfway down the road, and I looked down about half a mile down, and coming up is this little tiny white-robed figure, and it's Soen Roshi. He's out for a walk alone. So this is like right out of the Zen books, right? So me, the young, like sort of knuckle-headed 19-year-old, 20, I don't know, maybe I was 21, 22-year-old Zen student, with the once-in-a-lifetime sort of encounter with this, great sage. So finally we got up, and, he bowed to me, and, he looked at me, and then he pointed to a flower that was growing right by the road. It was a daisy. And he says, "What do you call this?" So I thought, oh, here it is. Here's the great moment, And I had no idea what to say. And I just sort of stammered. I was on the verge of tears. I was so upset. Here was my moment, and I couldn't even say anything. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know the answer to that question. It's like some big Zen question. And he says, no. Name. What is name? And I looked, and it was a daisy. So I said, it's a daisy. And he got down on all fours, bowed down, and got eye to eye with the daisy and said, "Daisy, daisy, wonderful flower." Like this, just like roared at this flower, and got down there, sat down there with this daisy. And I remember, thinking that I had seen something extraordinary, but I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I had no idea what that meant, or what I just witnessed. I had no idea what the teaching was or anything like that. And they stood up, and he bowed, and they walked off. And it wasn't until he died several years later, and I'd been studying Zen for a while, that it occurred to me that he had shown me how to replace the world in this space here, to displace all of the self-importance that typically occupies what we experience as the world, and to let the real world rush in and replace it. So when Reb Nachman says in this chapter on learning, he says, if a person could come back from the dead and pray, he would certainly pray with all his might. It simply means that a person comes back from the dead as a person who comes back from that experience of having the self completely replaced by the world. That's to experience death. A person who comes back from the dead prays with all his might to unite with that which is normally invisible to us, even though it surrounds us, even though it supports us, even though it gives rise to our life, supports our life, and it reclaims our life when we die. And even though we can't for 1 second or 1 instant step aside from it or apart from it while we're alive, nevertheless, we somehow manage to displace it. It's a famous Japanese Zen saying that said, as small as a hand is, placed before the eyes, it blocks the view of a mountain. Small as the hand is, placed before the eyes, it blocks the view of a mountain. That's what that means.